Hello everyone, I'm Anna Creation, the first picture there. I work within the innovation team and I'm an innovation officer leading on autonomous vehicles and more recently now also data and AI. And with me I have my colleague Hannah. Hannah, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sorry, wasn't ready for the mic. Yes, I'm Hannah Toon from TFGM. So I work in the Intelligent Transport Systems team. So looking at connected vehicles and cooperative intelligent transport systems.
Perfect, thank you. And today we're going to talk about, when I say our transport vision, I refer to Greater Manchester and Transport Greater Manchester's transport vision. The impact of COVID-19 and how this is starting to change the course of transport planning. What our CAV policy is, and when I say CAV, I mean connected and autonomous vehicles. The need for innovation during COVID-19 and preparing for connectivity using smart junctions and 5G, as well as video analytics, which is part now of that AI part of my title. So a little bit of GM context. Ooh, I can make this bigger so it's easier to see. There we go. There we go. Okay. So Greater Manchester has a sustainable urban mobility plan that we refer to as our 2040 transport strategy. This is underpinned by an evidence base and is supported by a delivery plan as well. We also have several other strategies that are either sub-strategies to this or are written by other bodies such as the Combined Authority for Greater Manchester or simply from the Mayor's Office. We normally focus all of our efforts into meeting the aims within the 2040 strategy because this is our overarching strategy. So we must meet our vision and must work towards all those aims because we have a lot of set goals and a lot of other sub-strategies are relying on us meeting this overall strategy. So our vision in Greater Manchester is to create world-class connections that support long-term sustainable economic growth and access to opportunity for all. Sounds like an easy sentence, but of course, as you can imagine, there are a lot of implications within that. At the moment, we have 2.8 million people living in Greater Manchester, and we're expecting that growth to exceed 3 million. It will be interesting to know what the impact of COVID will actually be on that because every year we see more and more people moving in Greater Manchester than we expected, and those are usually young professionals because if you're not aware of sort of the UK economy, it's normally straight from university, students migrate towards sort of like the largest urban economic centres, usually London, but it's now starting to be more Manchester and Birmingham just because of the cheaper living costs. So our support for CAVs is conditional because we will support them only if they make a positive impact for our residents and of course help us meet our 2040 strategy. We have, this is our Mayor's vision, our network, and this is basically an outline of everything that the transport sector has to provide in order to meet GM's 2040 strategy. So, of course, we have integrated CAVs within this, and CAVs must be aligned with the principles within our network, and they must be convenient, affordable, sustainable, accessible, and accountable. And all of our goals sit within these 4 areas. So CAVs have to, again, be all-encompassing and sit within all these 4, otherwise we will not support them in our city. So to start working towards supporting the introduction of CAVs, we have developed 7 principles that will best allow GM to capitalize on the development of CAV technology. And of course, the principles that we have developed align very well with all of our goals. And we don't know exactly how they will impact our cities, but we know what we want from them because we are aware of all the gaps that we have in our cities. Our strategy is mostly connectivity, then autonomy. So we are using all of the projects that we're involved in on CAVs, such as our project Synergy, which is funded by Innovate UK, and of course Levitate. We are using all the knowledge that we're getting from these projects to constantly update our principles and use all the learnings to feed into our 2040 strategy as well, which we refresh as much as possible. Try to do it every 5 years, but if something, let's say, obviously now with COVID-19, if something that's sort of a large scale impact happens, then we update our strategy and our evidence base as well. So try to put together, I know this must be very bright on everyone's screens after some really dark slides. Try to put together a little timeline to try and explain our CAV activity. Sorry that it looks very basic, but hopefully it should make sense. So back in 2018, we did a study on understanding what we need from CAVs as TFGM, and not also that, what we need to do in order to make sure that these are introduced in our cities and they meet all our aims as we outline them. Because of course it's easy to just write 7 principles and then just sit back and wait for the market to take action, but that will not mean that any of our principles will be met. So when we first started, I think in 2017, when the government announced that, the UK government, I should say, announced that CAVs should be on the road by 2021, we were definitely in this space of being more passive, as we weren't really involved in activity in the sector, and we weren't really undertaking any trials. And so because of the government's announcement, we started taking action and started working on bidding, and we were successful, very lucky to be successful so soon. So in November 2017, our project Synergy started, and that was shortly followed by UITP's project called Space, which is an online visualization tool of CAV activity across Europe, and also Project Levitate, of course, later on in 2018. And we started working on those 3 projects in parallel. And of course, then we started working a lot more closely with academic partners within Greater Manchester, because working on such large projects, we were involved with a lot of academic partners that weren't necessarily based in Manchester or the UK. So we started working with the University of Salford to work towards a strategy and more city lab scenarios for Greater Manchester, and have them on board for support with research. We started our partnership in February 2019, and since then we have worked together in redrafting our principles and having several events together. I think I've missed off one of them. So after the partnership started, we finalized our principles for CAVs, and we then used an event which should be here between June 2019 and September 2019. We presented it at a workshop full of professionals from the CAV sector to basically gather their views, and that included people within the UK and people from outside of the UK as well, because those views are really important to us, of course, as other cities are more advanced than we are in this sector. So as we started rolling through these activities, I think our role as TFGM changed from passive to facilitator. We hosted a citizens conversation in 2019, which basically was to understand whether the citizens in Greater Manchester agree with our CAV principles and if we have missed anything. And we did a evidence-based study which outlined several personas and use cases within Greater Manchester, and we were very keen to understand the views of people within Greater Manchester to know exactly whether we should continue working on developing those personas and strategies for those personas, or if we've missed something off. So I think that was one of the key moments where we moved from passive to proactive, but I think we definitely have a lot more work to do to become a fully proactive actor in the CAV space. So here are our 7 principles, ta-da! I'm sure you'll find them very exciting, and unlike anything else you've seen in policy principles and policy documents before. I'm of course joking. They are a very standard way of writing policy, and we have tried to align these with the future urban mobility strategy released by the Department for Transport, who also have several principles. So it seems that we're all thinking alike, which is great. So I think the key thing for us at the moment is working towards ensuring that our active modes of travel are not impacted by autonomous vehicles and new mobility overall, and that our mass transit system is supplemented as opposed to directly competed against with any new mobility modes, including CAVs. I won't read all the principles, but I'm sure the slides will be available afterwards, and we'll be happy to discuss if anyone has any questions on these. So C19, we're all aware it's happened and we can't run away from it. And how are we tackling it in Greater Manchester? Well, in terms of transport planning and transport policy, it's been a seismic event, to say the least. And before, we were having our strategies aligned to short, medium, and long-term delivery plans. We have recently changed the way we operate, and we're focusing now on 3 days, 3 months, and 3 years. Because it's very difficult to predict very far in the future, as we don't really know, again, what to expect from this crisis. So as all local and city authorities, we are trying to make the most out of our limited resources, and therefore exploiting our existing knowledge and assets is necessary, is no longer optional, it's something that we must do in order to thrive through the current situation. We have been bidding a lot more than we would previously because, of course, we are being impacted heavily by the loss of revenue due to a very limited number of people traveling by public transport. And therefore, we need to make sure that we infill that gap with external funding that will help us not only trial new things, but continue with our initiatives on decarbonisation and sustainable travel. We are seeing a break in usual traffic patterns, and we are seeing this as an opportunity to introduce measures for walking and cycling. I won't go on too much about that because if you've been listening to the POLIS webinar, you've known that almost every city across the world is trying to do this, which is great. But this is just a graph of traffic patterns within Greater Manchester. So this was I think right in the middle of lockdown, just after it had been eased off slightly. And you can see that normally we have the very clear AM and PM peak, whereas during lockdown, there wasn't really anything sort of related to specific peaks. It just seemed to be diluted across. And of course, that's because schools are not open and people are not commuting to the office. What was quite interesting from this analysis during COVID-19 is that it gave us a lot more insight into factors such as social demographic patterns, which we often don't look at directly when we compare traffic patterns. So for example, some regions within Greater Manchester still have very obvious AM and PM peaks, whilst others don't. So that could be due to the type of employment in the area and not having the ability to work from home. So that's something that we would look to do further research into. And we're currently doing a proposal on that for an ICLEI fund. So hopefully we'll have further insight on that if we are successful in our bid. So looking ahead, as I've mentioned before, our PT demand has fallen to very low numbers. For our Metrolink service, is 5% of its peak, whilst for buses and rail, it's 10%, which is very, very low. We now have a lot of questions like how long will it take for patronage levels to recover? How will this affect shared mobility and the prospects of increasing its availability within Greater Manchester? This question is particularly pressing at the moment as I'm not sure if you're aware, but the UK government is pushing forward with trials on e-scooters. So that's something completely new for us. And I don't know if there's any colleagues from Antwerp on the call, but thank you so much for all the insight you've provided us. I have to say, constant collaboration with other cities during C19 and with Polis has been really crucial to our response, and is something that has, I think, definitely helped us be better in our response to C19. So thank you to all, and let's keep collaborating, please. And we're now looking more at, what can we implement now from the work we have done so far on CAVs? Because of course, when we started working on CAVs back in 2017, it was a completely new topic, but this new mobility does come with a lot of other sort of technological advancements that we perhaps wouldn't have looked into if we weren't working on CAVs. So on that note, I will pass on to Hannah, who will talk about our Smart Junctions trial.
Hi, yep. So I just want to touch on some of the projects that are actually helping us shape our connected vehicle strategy and as we move to autonomous vehicles. So we've currently got a Smart Junctions project, which is Innovate UK funded, working in partnership with Vivacity Labs. So we're looking at how artificial intelligence can be used to improve signal control. So Vivacity provides a video analytics sensor, so it can classify 9 different categories of road users, so we can see there pedestrians and cyclists and bus and private car. So this has the benefit of allowing us to optimize the signals for those road users, so we can optimize for pedestrians and optimize for cyclists. This would have been a really useful tool for us during COVID-19 because we've been making individual tweaks to junctions. We've been able to do it across the network, like lowering cycle times to ensure that pedestrians aren't waiting too long, but at particular junctions we've had to make individual changes. But if we were able to implement those optimization techniques for pedestrian and cyclists, it would have been a real benefit. Using the AI for dynamic optimization would also help with the, as we've made physical infrastructure changes, so changes in crossing widths, introducing cycle lanes and reducing carriageway widths. So as the Smart Junctions is all based around artificial intelligence, it will be learning that highway environment and reacting automatically, so that there'd be no need for manual intervention and revalidation of the signals. Anna, could you do the next slide, please? Yep. And so moving forward with the Smart Junctions project, we're looking at 5G for communications and connectivity. So we've just submitted a proposal to UK government as part of the 5G test and trials programme. So we're looking to use the Smart Junctions project as a use case for 5G. So building on the fact that it's more cost efficient to deploy, so there's less communication costs and less costs for civils in connecting cabling between junctions and cabling to sensors. It also allows us to get ready for connected vehicles, so looking at having a model for a connected junction. We'd also be able to feed in connected vehicle data to the optimization model. The 5G corridor would also give us an environment to test and trial with SMEs. So within Salford, there is currently the landing which works with SMEs on trials. So we're looking to work with them as well. So, and also building on the work that Anna mentioned earlier with Salford University. So they've currently got an autonomous pod that is operating within the university campus. And there's an aspiration to operate that pod between the two university campuses. So there's the main Salford University campus and then a campus at Media City, and then one of the rail stations. So that's just indicated there on the map, and the 5G connectivity would really help us with that. Also looking to develop the connected vehicle strategy. So Anna mentioned the CAV principles that are already established. So we'd be building on this with our digital strategy as well. Anna, could you do the next slide, please?
Just to let you know that you have 5 minutes.
Okay, yep, I'll be quick. So yeah, just quickly the benefits of the Smart Junctions project to TFGM. So we have over 2,500 sets of traffic signals, and about 1,000 of those are using adaptive scoot control currently. So we're looking at how we can use different signaling strategies as we move towards integrating connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So the Smart Junctions project helps us with this. We've also got another project with Transport Research Laboratory, which is based on open infrastructure. So we're looking at getting additional data into the traffic signal model. So we're looking at Google data, mobile phone data, integrating emergency vehicle AVL as well. Also within that project, we'll get data out of the system. So we're looking at how we can do that using open infrastructure and allowing third parties to utilize that data. So possibly building mobility apps for journey time and disruption as well. The project also allows us to demonstrate smart cities, so having smarter infrastructure, better communications, more data, and also integrating additional sensors, so looking at integrating air quality sensors, co-locating those and building signal strategies around air quality flags. And again, it gives us a wealth of data which has been really useful throughout COVID-19. So we've been able to look at the trends in walking and cycling, as Anna's already mentioned that. But the vivacity sensors also have a capability for social distancing. So we've been able to get before and after data from those sensors because it's providing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week live data feed. But the social distancing function allows us to measure the 2-meter distance and also the time of interaction. This is being developed because it can't differentiate between households, but that's something that we are looking at. That kind of feeds back to Anna and her social distancing project. So I'll pass you back.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll move on quickly because I know we're pressed for time. So as part of our recent bidding framework, we've been recently successful in working on a project on measuring impact of social distancing on transportation with humanizing autonomy. And this is to basically overcome a really big challenge that we are having now and that we've been having during lockdown with regards to keeping the public safe by encouraging social distancing. And in the UK, it has to be 2 meters in public spaces. So we are working with humanizing autonomy to apply this at our transport interchanges. So they're like multimodal hubs for us, and use our existing CCTV infrastructure. So again, this is really important because we're exploiting what we already have in terms of our CCTV on the ground. So we don't need to install additional measures. And of course, working with a new partner is always exciting, especially in the area of video analytics. So yeah, this is a 6-month project. It officially started on the 1st of June, but as the team from Humanizing Autonomy know, it started pretty much as soon as we started talking because there's a lot of, let's just say, agreements and stuff to do around data and GDPR. So that was very challenging, but also very exciting, to say the least. And the purpose of the project is for our facilities management team to pretty much respond on the ground So having insight into how the multimodal hubs or interchanges are being used, and if there's any pinch points within them where social distancing is not followed, to take measures on the ground. That is currently not possible just by doing observational counts, as that's what we normally do, because there's not many people that are manning the interchanges, because due to the sort of low demand for public transport, we've also decreased staff time at these. So they're not as well staffed as before. So now we need other ways to find insight and to provide to the teams on the ground. What's really important for us from this specific project is not only that it's helping us with measuring social distancing, but it also helping us with supporting and our upgrades for future plans of these interchanges, as this will give us actual insight into how people are moving within the interchanges and how they're interacting with the space. And that's something that we've never had before. So it will hopefully help us apply more customized measures to not lose the local dimension and make the interchanges as attractive as possible and a pleasant environment for people to be in whilst they use public transport. Just to say, at most interchanges, because we operate the Metrolink, it's normally Metrolink, which is our tram service, and bus, but some also have access to rail stations as well, and every interchange has a cycling hub as well. So that's a very safe parking space for bikes. So yeah, this is our project delivery timeline. It is due to end at the beginning of December. So it will be an early Christmas present, getting this project successfully completed. And there were 8,666 applications and only 719 won. So we think this is a great success rate and we're very excited. Even more excited to get all these outputs, as you can see listed here. And this is all data that we've previously not had from a coherent source. It's normally something that we've done through observational counts, or we've just done it per sort of interchange to try and get some insight from it. I won't go through them because I know we're very short on time. So please go through the PowerPoint at the end of the webinar if you're interested in these. Or get in touch with us either through our personal email addresses or through innovation@tfgm.com. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Anna. I just want to let you know that if you have questions to the presenters, you can ask them in the comment section. And at the end of the webinar, we are going to answer all of them. Just please mention the name of the presenter who you are asking the questions from, that it's easier to identify. And then I'm going to give you the floor to Professor George Yanis to make the presentation from the National Technical University of Athens. I think I made you a presenter, George.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sharing my screen. I hope that you see the screen.
Yes.
I'm going to make a nice presentation about the first sub-use case of LEVITATE project on urban transport services. In fact, a very quick outline of the LEVITATE project, as I was supposed to be the first in the series of presentations. It's an Horizon 2020 project. We are midway, already 1 year and a half before and after, with several partners from several countries. And in fact, the main challenge of LEVITATE project is to have an holistic approach about the impacts on safety, mobility, environment, and prosperity. By using as quantified and evidence-based approach, which will allow us to forecast and backcast the impact of future systems. So it is very challenging, and however, we have a step-by-step approach going bottom-up, identifying impacts for each specific sub-use case and different systems in order to build overall impact scenario for safety, mobility, and the environment. At the end of the day, we're going to build a tool, policy support tool, to support mainly cities, but also regions and national governments within the developed impact assessment framework that we worked so far, and we're going to demonstrate it into a web-based policy support tool. In fact, our challenges concern mainly to identify all impacts in terms of safety, congestion, economy, and the environment, and the related key policy decisions to maximize these benefits with a special focus on cities. We will be as analytic as possible with identifying and forecasting impacts for different time horizons, with a wide range of impacts, a wide range of forecasting methods, and a wide range of city types, for smaller and dense to larger. So we cover quite a large range. In fact, the structure of our project was started with impact assessment methodologies and scenarios and indicator development for forecasting and backcasting. And then we have 3 use cases. First one on automated urban transport, second one on passenger cars, and the third one on freight transport and logistics. And today we're going to present the automated urban transport, the use case 1. And as you see, all the outputs of our work, the methodological part and the use cases, will lead to the development of the web-based policy support tool, which will allow for to support policy and formulate policy recommendations. In urban transport, that we're going to discuss today, we have 3 sub-use cases. The first one, it is the point-to-point automated urban shuttle service, connecting 2 transport modes, which we have run for all of them. We have run simulations through Samsung software, traffic simulation software, to identify the various impacts. For the first sub-use case, we have completed the first phase, and we have nice results to demonstrate today. And for the point-to-point automated urban shuttle service at a large-scale network, we are underway with several scenarios running. And for the third sub-use case, autonomous mobility on demand shuttle service, it is also under simulation. So going to the first sub-use case, the point-to-point automated urban shuttle service, we had connecting 2 major urban bus stations in Athens, which are at a distance of 3.4 kilometers, where there are a series of signalized arterials and secondary streets passing from one bus station to the other. So we have our AVs, which are a typical shuttle, 5 meters length, 2.5 meters width, with 10 passengers total capacity, 40 kilometers per hour maximum operating speed, 25 kilometers per hour mean speed, which is well above the average public transport speed in Athens, and 15-minute service frequency. Of course, we have run several different scenarios with and without the shuttle bus service in 2021 during peak and off-peak hours. Both and for the networks level, we have again peak and off-peak hour, different mobility scenarios, emergence of an incident on the shuttle route, and operating on a dedicated lane or with the rest of the traffic. If we go to the results, we found quite robust results, meaning that most of the scenario were converging to the trends of the results. And it is quite obvious, and in a way was expected, that the speed variance of the shuttle bus gets higher values during off-peak hour than peak hour. But most importantly, the shuttle bus leads to increased delay times on its route, especially on the signalized arterials, meaning that there is a weaker performance of the automated shuttle bus to coordinate with the remaining of the traffic. So we have increased delay times, and this is something found also in several different other studies. Of course, it's not what we wish to have in order to introduce the AVs, but it is a fact that we have to work on. And another finding is that shuttle bus service affects traffic only during off-peak hour, when the traffic is much lower and stochastic, whereas when during rush hours, these delay times do not vary that much, because anyway the traffic, it is much slower, so there is no need for optimization and coordination of the shuttle buses to the remaining of the traffic. And we can further see that, however, delay time gets lower values when there are more automated vehicles in the network, meaning that in the beginning, having one or very few automated vehicles running around will have increased delay time. But this is improving the more the automated vehicles are entering and penetrating the traffic. And again, we have also seen that automation decreases CO2 emissions during both peak and off-peak hour conditions. So in terms of emissions, of course, we are improving. And also we can see that if the shuttle bus uses a dedicated lane, both delay time and CO2 emissions are increased during off-peak and peak hour, because of course there is no optimization in the use of space. As a dedicated lane, it is used only by the shuttle bus, and the remaining of the time it is empty. We have also seen that an incident occurrence on the shuttle service route was not observed to affect traffic delays, given that it was a rather rare phenomenon. And if the shuttle bus uses a dedicated lane, then the number of conflicts is reduced during off-peak hour, and for other occasions it seems to be increased. So of course, less conflicts, less accidents. So off-peak hour it is better for also for safety reasons. And overall, we have seen from this sub-use case that automation seems to lead to decreased number of crossing conflicts. If the shuttle bus uses a dedicated lane, the number of lane change conflicts is higher, which is quite interesting and not expected from as an initial hypothesis. And the number of rear-end conflicts is increased if an incident occurs on the shuttle bus route. So we see that safety and accidents are having, there is a positive trend. However, depending on the type of conflicts and accidents and incidents, there might be also increase on specific cases. So again, the more we go into the detail, the more we decode the impact of the specific shuttle bus service to the different impacts, traffic, environment, safety. And then if we move on to the point-to-point automated urban shuttle service in a large-scale network, we have implemented in the city of Athens some routes of point-to-point shuttle buses, which were running in parallel with existing transit services, with intermediate stations connecting various specific destinations and connecting areas with low transit coverage. Athens is a city of 4 million people, and we modeled the center of Athens, which is something like 1 million population in the area that you see in the central area of the Athens basin. And our matrices were 290 by 290 with 2,500 sections and 1,137 nodes. There is in the Athens network, there are 170 public transport lines with 1,000 public transport stations. And in our case, we had we proposed 4 shuttle bus lines connecting major transport and touristical points of the city. There we have to mention that during our work on simulating automation in Athens, NTUA, our university, was running in parallel a large regeneration project of a lot of streets being pedestrianized and freed by private cars and motorcycles, and dedicated to public transport, pedestrians and cyclists. So we were able to combine our tests of automated shuttles with the larger regeneration project, mainly the second bus line. It is the one which goes along the route and the roads of the larger regeneration project, which eventually started this morning and expected by this weekend to be fully operational. So of course, it was an ideal case that not only we go for less cars and more public transport in the city, but this public transport we have modeled it in terms of being automated and further assist better traffic, environmental and safety conditions. So it is an opportunity to work not only on a theoretical base, but also combine with a current big, large regeneration project in Athens. In fact, we have provided dedicated lanes. We have examined different extreme conditions in terms of incidents, traffic or weather, and we focused on the different frequencies of service with intermediate stops. We carried out macro simulation for different traffic indicators, meso simulation for environmental impacts, and micro simulation for conflicts and road safety impacts, with the related meta-analysis and Delphi to assist the simulations in order to make the results more transferable and ready to be used in the policy support tool as a generic approach to be used and transferred in other cities. And then we have the third sub-use case. In fact, the second and the third sub-use cases, we don't present results today because they are underway. We are well advanced and there are some nice results, but before having the full picture, we don't deliver, but very soon will be announced, and of course they are going to be included in the policy support tool. Getting to the third use case, the autonomous mobility on demand service from a shuttle. We have service specifications, the fixed routes with completely free routing, with fixed timetables and on-demand real-time requests, the physical stops with stops anywhere, and the fleet type small shuttles, and rides offered disconnected from existing public transport service. So it is a fully flexible service on demand of a small shuttle which has the full flexibility to meet the demand of the passengers. Part of the demand will be assigned to the new mode. The demand shift will be estimated based on the new mode choice model of Athens. So we run a stated preference survey to identify user choices. And the demand is generated dynamically during the simulation period, including some random variations to demonstrate the real conditions and the real variability of traffic conditions. So how this demand will be served from the new mode, we have to identify the trips, to optimize algorithm to assign vehicles to demand, and to monitor the impact to the network. And concluding, the objective of all these simulations were not just the results of one for the specific sub-use cases, but in fact it is results which can provide transferable findings. So in order to be put in the PST, the policy support tool, which will be a web-based tool to support cities that we are developing during the project to be operational soon. So with the different sub-use cases, we go from the different parameters of the system to the impacts, and we have a set of relationships to calculate indicators for forecasting and backcasting. This specific PST tool we go from the sub-use cases to the parameters, and to the parameters to the impacts, We are quite exhaustive, however, synthetic, with not that many, but covering in an holistic way all different parameters and impacts, both for the forecasting system per use case and the backcasting subsystem, together with a series of nice knowledge module on bibliography findings, the results of the specific cases, the tools, documentations, and a set of guidelines. Concluding, in fact, the key findings about the point-to-point automated shuttle concern, first of all, that automated shuttle bus leads to increased delay times, especially on the signalized arterials, and we cannot deny this. We have to face it and improve it. However, delay time gets lower values when more automated vehicles exist in the network, so the higher the penetration, the better the conditions. And CAV introduction will decrease emissions and conflicts during peak hours, so there is a net positive impact on environment and safety of the CAVs. In the future, we have to face several additional open issues. Which challenges will arise for on-demand shuttle service? What's the impact of shuttle service on a modal split? Is it going to be attractive? How the positive environmental and safety impact will compensate for some negative traffic impact? And of course, we cannot put out the impact of COVID on automation, which of course there is a big challenge currently people don't prefer public transport due to the need of social distancing, and how this is going to be addressed by automated shuttles. Perhaps on-demand shuttle will allow for social distancing together with public transport preference of the users. And of course, our holistic approach puts in the framework not only traffic, environment, and safety, but also the economic benefits of introducing all these sub-use cases in urban environment, in terms also of monetary values, micro and macro economic benefits. So these are issues that will be dealt in our next steps of our analysis. So I conclude with these urban transport services examples from the simulations, which hopefully will feed the PST, the policy support tool, with results that can be transferable to other cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, for the presentation. We are a bit in delay, so I would like to ask the presenters to try answering the questions that the participants are answering in the chat folder, because now we are going to have the third presentation, which is going to take us another 20 minutes. Thank you for your help. And now I'm going to ask Michael to give his presentation. I'm going to give you the rights to present. If I find your name, yes, I have
Should
it.
be still there.
I gave you the presentation rights, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I get into the presentation mode. At least try it. Okay, I'm going to take you to Bremen and also to a project called Art Forum, which is an Interreg North Sea project standing for Automated Road Transport Forum for the North Sea region. Interreg project, and it's more about scenario development, then technical implementation, and really to understand what's the potential of automated transport. To be very precise, automated road transport. And just to show you a little bit information about Bremen and some points that we discussed this morning earlier on, the role of other modes of transport, especially the active modes of walking and cycling. And as you can see, about 50% of the movements in Bremen are done by walking and cycling, 25% by cycling, which shows Bremen as a cycling city, and especially in the COVID-19 period now, that was part of resilience of the city. You could easily get around with a bicycle, which is pretty special. So in total, almost 50% of the trips are, and that's the number from 2018, 50% of the trips done by non-motorized modes, which of course sets the scene very much. In Bremen, we are testing out certain technology developments. As you can see here, this vehicle from the University of Bremen and DLR is equipped with a lot of sensors, and this is really able to move around on its own. Of course, it needs to have a driver on board for safety reasons, and it's to develop complex algorithms for automated and autonomous transport. We are, as a harbor city, of course, very much interested in freight transport automation there, all with the interest of increasing efficiency and also how to get to driverless operation. That's a key point. Bremen has a large Mercedes plant, and we're trying to establish a project there, both on the company ground as well as also on some public streets, to have a feeder from a cargo train station into the plant with some platooning and later on some driverless operation. Talking about driverless operation, really driverless operation is happening in harbor areas, and this is planned also in Bremen and Bremerhaven, that these van carriers or straddle carriers are to be operated really unmanned, and that's possible because this is a segregated area. And I think this is another lesson learned, that a lot of these technical developments or technological developments can help to increase efficiency of industrial processes. In Art Forum, one of the key points is the dialogue with citizens and with public authorities, capacity building, what's in automation and what's in autonomous transport. And we should not mix up automation and autonomous transport. So let's go back to the future and have a look a little bit to the development. And I know some of people in the audience were involved in that period 11 years ago. Here you can see me and some other fellows in the City Mobile project, and the thing behind it is not a bus stop or bus shelter. This is the automated vehicle at that time. It developed further, became a bit more design, and here you can see in the north of Spain some first tests in mixed traffic operation on the roads, and now we are seeing this. It's called autonomous. We can discuss whether it's really autonomous, but it's automated, and a lot of these trials are ongoing, and we heard about it in the presentations before. This, of course, is the icon of the development, a real automated autonomous vehicle that has no steering wheel and no gas pedal. This is, let's say, the peak of the development. This is really autonomous. There are a lot of talks about autonomous transport and announcements like this. Flying cars are coming, they'll be autonomous. There are expectations to have things in the next 5 or 10 years, and this is very much technology driven. But we have to be realistic. If you look at air transport, you can check Sao Paulo or New York, and you will see that it does not solve the transport problems that we have on the ground. So we have to be realistic, and this is part of our project approach. And a question to you that I would like to raise, this year today is 162 years old, and did you use something that was an electric means of transport, but also operated automatically? And when talking driverless, really driverless, so no safety driver, no steward on board, no chaperone, really driverless, and that was also on demand. Ask yourself, unfortunately I cannot see whether you raise your hand or not. I think most of you did, because you used an elevator, and elevators in fact are automated vehicles, and that's something, and they are really driverless. There is no safety driver on board. It's just going a little bit different direction. It's on demand, and we have similar development. Here's the metro in Paris that's changed to automated transport. It's not autonomous. It cannot change the route. It still sticks like an elevator to the given, mechanically given route. But what we see, these people are really trusting the technology that's given, and it's working pretty well. And we have the Icon in Vancouver in Canada since 1986, operated really driverless. And when we look at it, we can see they have very short trains, smaller infrastructure, but operated with a very high frequency. And that's the only option, because it's really driverless. And that's also the difference to the development with all the minibus shuttles, because they still need someone on board, and that's costly. So, but operating on street space is different, because you have no physical separation. And coming back to Bremen, keep in mind, we are a cycling city, we have small streets, so we have to have this in mind. These minibuses, very much in the debate and funded. Here is the first real operation as part of an urban bus system in Sion in Switzerland. And here is something that's, of course, before COVID-19 and social distancing, but things that we have to have in mind: interior design, safety of the people when these vehicles operate faster than today, when they are really going the speed that we heard from Athens. There's something with the safety, but also the perception when you see this lady squeezed in by these two big men. These were all project partners here, so no problem, but things we have to think about when it's really operated without people, and everyone knows how you feel in an elevator. These vehicles are today very limited in speed usually, so that's a question where they are. And although called autonomous, they're definitely not autonomous, they're just automated. But there are a lot of advantages. Here is one example from CityMobile, an automatically guided bus with a big advantage. It was always 40 millimeters to the bus stop. So there are a lot of benefits that we can see here for handicapped people, that the bus was perfectly brought to the curb. But economic advantages are only given when really driverless. That means when we have level 4 or level 5. And you know all these levels, so that's what we all discuss every day, but only level 4 and 5 will allow us to operate driverless and will bring us the benefits in terms of economy. So we have to be careful when using all these terms. Autonomous is a term that's used with quite some inflation. We have to see that it's usually just automated and even not driverless, what we see. Coming back to urban space, and here is some scenario that we all know from the late 50s, and in fact you see the optical guidance is what was used also for the buses in CityMobile. But I would like to draw your attention more to the kind of infrastructure. And when talking about segregated lanes, this is definitely not what we want, but what we find also in our cities. And here we see the situation in Bremen: narrow streets, limited space, and all the things coming together, all the different functions of social space, of transport space, of ecological functions, even some artwork. And this is an extreme challenge for every autonomous scenario. People crossing the street, cyclists, dogs, whatever you can find. So this is an extreme challenge for automation. But there's a lot of hope, and I think most of you know this graph here done by Daimler, Mercedes, and Bosch together, and we will have a further look at this. So how to solve our today's problems. So here we can see it, and when you look into the literature, you can find variations of these drawings. And here you can even see you have different modes of transport. You have a cycle lane, and even then today's problems that it's blocked by some cars. We have cargo bikes here. We have still traffic lights. So this information is given. It's quite interesting to analyze that drawing. And when we look into the potential in the United States, they say it can save 800 billion US dollars a year, which is about 700 billion euros per year. And most of it coming from safety, much of it coming from real estate, and a little bit coming from congestion. So these are the main benefits. And the question is, how far are we along the way towards this scenario? Let's have a look at real estate. This is how our cities still look today. And the question is, do we have to wait for autonomous transport to do it, to get to a situation here? And when we look at this, we see only a few cars. We see here car sharing stations. That's what we have. We can reduce the space consumption if we all go to connected vehicles. Here we see the chance to reduce the size of vehicles because this can avoid accidents and collisions. And you know the studies that we can replace up to 90% of road vehicles. So keep all the cars away from the curb. But only if we have a collective transport of high volume. That means metro and light rail, and the idea of having some bus services in the periphery that can be replaced by these small buses, minibuses. So there are some prerequisites that are necessary to make this reality. And one point is then to replace individual car ownership by using shared modes, especially car sharing. And we say we don't have to wait for autonomous transport. Car sharing is something that's available today as an alternative to car ownership. So if we want to prepare for automation and autonomous transport, we can do it today by promoting car sharing, for instance. Second point, we always have this term disruptive mobility. And of course, we can say the disruptive point, the disruptive factor for autonomous transport is our human behavior. And it doesn't matter whether it's simply the status of having and driving a car or by our behavior on the road, which is not so easy to detect and to forecast for automated transport. And it's a question, how will be the acceptance by human drivers when we say you have to change and to give up steering? Because that's the only way to really harvest the potential of automation and connectivity. So we don't only have to replace individual car ownership, we have also to give up human steering, which probably is another big hurdle that we see. Traffic safety and automation, another big point, the largest point of the benefits that are seen in automation and autonomous transport. So cars become more careful than they are with their human drivers. And this is definitely a benefit and a potential which is with ADAS, with assistance. And here you see an ad by Volkswagen. You can't have your eyes everywhere, but your car can. Or here, this example, you can buy today a vehicle with pedestrian detection, and it helps to stop when others are not able to be stopped here with a dog. So this is available today. And we can have benefits in road safety if speed limits were kept automatically. And that means adaptive speed limitation and not just an assistant that you can turn off like with ISA. Here we have an example in Bremen that's on my way back home. That's a 30-kilometer zone, and you can see this taxi was shot with 54K. At that point, it was almost 60 when it came and saw me with a camera there. So to really implement 30 kilometers and to keep it, that's a huge potential, but will probably cause quite some political debate. And here we see it. You can turn off the intelligent speed assistance, which are mandatory up from 2022. And also Tesla removed the autopilot speed limiter after there were complaints on Twitter. So it's not an easy thing. Congestion, the last point. Do we need to segregate roads? If we did so, I think this would cause quite some disadvantages for the active modes. Just recall 50% of all trips done in Bremen are in active modes. We cannot do this segregation. So that's not really a point that leads forward. So to have really access to such a scenario as we see it here requires something, and that's to optimize traffic speed. And I could see in the chat that there was a debate about 25K per hour as average, or that as a usual speed in urban streets. That's what we have to come to if we want to enable automated vehicles to deal with all the other traffic modes and also under safety aspects. So to really make it a coherent movement, including cyclists, because cyclists are usually going something between 15 and 25. So we reduce situations overtaking and would increase overall road safety. So we have to say 25K should be the urban speed of the future if we want automation. And we have to dare, and this is a political process that we can start already today ahead of the technical developments. So this is the last point, and I think this could be a task and a huge point also for European and national policy making, a general speed in urban areas of 25K as long as you don't have segregated roads. And that would also help to speed up public transport where it's segregated, or give it some advantages to against door-to-door services with automated vehicles. So I hope I could provoke you a little bit, and thank you for listening. First I had in mind to have some polls, but that's not possible with a software that we used, so no active involvement as I planned it, but I hope you had some fun and some new insights. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Michael. And as I see, there are several questions, but also I see that Anna, Hannah, and George tried to answer them by the time you were presenting. So I would say I'm gonna read the questions to you, Michael, and I would ask.
Yes,
I would like to ask the other two presenters to try to answer written for the questions. So there is a question actually to all of you, question to Anna, Hannah, and Michael. Most research projects are showing that CAV's benefits may only be realized once there is a high penetration of highly automated vehicles. How should cities handle the long transition period? If Michael, you could give your answer.
Yeah, if I mean, we cannot only look at the automated vehicles, we have to look at the other traffic as well. And as I said, to reduce speed to 25K would allow this vehicle to get into operation and really realistic conditions. And as automated vehicles have to keep the rules, I mean, other human drivers have to keep it as well, but don't do it. So we have to redefine these rules and how to keep it. And in certain areas, it will work much easier if there is segregation, but that's something I see only for interurban connections and not for urban roads. So we have to really reduce the conflicts by reducing speeds. That's the best way to make automated operation possible.
Thank you. Anna, Hannah, would you like to add something? And George, okay.
Yes, I would like to say that in our approach, we try to be as detailed as possible. So we go for different penetration levels in order to identify the impacts for the different levels. So independently of time. So if we get higher penetration earlier or later, the impact is calculated in terms of penetration and not in terms of time. So we have full flexibility to see how the impact indicators are improving depending on the different penetration levels. Of course, in order to identify these specific impact indicators, on one hand we use simulation, but we also exploit existing research and results from from any methodology. But also we'll go for a large Delphi survey where we take opinions from the leading experts in the field in order to calibrate our results with their opinions on the mainly the macroscopic impact of CAVs, also in terms of the different levels of penetration. Thank you.
Anna or Hannah, would you like to answer this question as well?
Yeah, I think just a point that I hopefully try to make quite a lot in my presentation is that we're not just waiting on the sidelines for the technology to just be fully developed and come into our cities. For us, it's really important that the transition period we utilize all of the developments that are made with CAF technology. And there's different types of systems. And there's systems that require infrastructure changes and systems that operate in silos. So I think for us, making the best use of what's the best system is for that time and place. So like what's really good for us now is working with systems that operate as silos and not needing to install additional infrastructure, particularly with COVID-19. And there are those systems available, such as what Wave provide. So working with those systems and learning from them, and then working towards sort of more integrated systems in the future. So yeah, I think we're trying quite hard to make the most of this knowledge now and implement it in our cities now to provide citizens with tangible outputs, because from the various consultation events we've done, it's very hard to gather insight from people when the outputs are, to be seen in like 20 plus years. So we need to break it down and show what CAV technology can do for people now and also in the future.
Thank you, Anna. There is another question to Michael from Carlos Holguin. Is there a metropolitan public organism that overlooks mobility in Bremen's suburbs? Which is the model split if you look outside the municipality of Bremen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Carlos, good question. Thank you for that. I saw it already in the chat. In fact, there are two cooperation levels in the wider metropolitan area, and the model split of the commuters, in fact, is quite different. It's much more car dependent. We have low density developments in the moorlands around Bremen. And the situation is different. It's a different topic to see what's the potential there. What we do right now is in fact promoting rather cycling with some high quality cycle connections similar to the Netherlands that people can use their electric or electrified bikes to commute into Bremen and to improve public transport. The question, especially rail, the question of whether we can get automated vehicles on underused rail tracks is something that we have in mind, but this will take probably decades. To be honest, every progress in rail is something that we can measure only in decades. If we want to have fast progress, that will be with a bicycle.
There is another question from Dirk. Bremen is a leading city concerning shared cars, but 100% sharing model and no individual seems utopia. What is max market penetration of shared cars? What about evolution car ownership in Bremen region?
Yeah, we reached, without COVID-19, these days we would have reached our target of 20,000 active car sharing users that replaced 6,000 private cars. We think we are far from really exploiting the potential right now. It's more a mental question than a physical question. It's like changing the image that the bicycle had in the 80s and 90s when it was seen as a poorer man's mode of transport, or compare it to smoking. When you look to old movies of the 60s and 70s, everybody was smoking. Humphrey Bogart was even blowing the smoke into the face of nice ladies, something where we say, this is insane, that's complete change. And if we were able to do this cultural change also to private cars, as we have it with smoking, or as the bicycle became now a cool mode of transport, that the shared modes are also that cool, then we have the chance to really get closer. And once again, look at these scenarios which say you can save so much space. They're all assuming that 100% shared modes or almost 100% will be possible. And we have, of course, to ask, how realistic is it? Are we on the way? Are we really promoting it? Or are we just developing technology? And I think if we are not connecting these 2 points, then we will fail. Then also the technology development will not lead us to the point. We have to do this societal impact as well. And I think this is one of the crucial points of Art Forum, which makes Art Forum different from Coexist and other or Levitate in the moment. But we have to connect it. We have really to bring together this societal developments, the image. We're not talking only about hardware and software, but mindware. And to bring this together, this is the only chance to exploit really the potential of the technological developments.
Thank you. I would like to ask all the presenters if there is a specific question you see in the chat that you would like to answer now. Otherwise, I'm going to save the chat log and I'm going to include it in the email what I'm sending out after the webinar. Okay, George.
Yeah, just a quick remark. It is very well said about safety. Indeed, lower speeds mean more going slower but safer. This it can happen today if drivers behave. So indeed, a major issue of CAVs, it is that they go slower and safer. So we cannot have both higher speeds, especially in the cities, and safety. So we have to, if we choose one of the two, then CAVs are better for safety, but not necessarily better in terms of speed. So this is a fact, a remark we take into account in all our impact assessments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hannah, any last point or answer to a question to give you the floor?
Nothing
Not
for
from
me.
me.
Hopefully, I got everything in the chat, and I see Hannah has as well. So thank you
Okay,
everyone
I'm
for
happy
being so
about that.
interactive.
If we
Yeah, I
haven't,
replied in the chat.
thank you. If we haven't answered one of the questions, as I told you, I'm going to save the text from the chat logs, so you can directly contact the person that you asked you, and you can have an answer via email. But now I have to close the webinar because we reached our 1.5 hour time frame. And I would like to thank you all for the participation. And also I would like to thank you, the presenters, for being here and presenting these interesting presentations for us. I'm going to send you an email about Levitate and how you can follow the project involvement in the future. And also I'm going to send you the link for the recording of the webinar. Thank you for being here today, and see you other times. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.